What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks crossover? Will the D-backs survive against the San Francisco Giants, but should we still be worried with how they played? Joining me to break down the madness of the series, as you can see, we got Ben Kaspick of Locked on Giants.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks crossover here with Locked on Giants host Ben Kaspick to break down the D-backs versus Giants series. Ben, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well after about 40 minutes of technical difficulties. Glad that we're finally able to talk, but good series. Hoped for a 2 out of 3, but it ultimately didn't come to pass. But very tight series, Millard.
Yeah, tight series, tight NL West, tight division, tight National League. Just a lot of good teams right now playing really good baseball. Don't know if the D-backs are one of them, but we'll break them down in this little series talk. But we first want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks, Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Please go check out Locked on D-backs, Locked on Giants, wherever you stream podcasts. And don't forget to hit subscribe both on Locked on Giants and Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And for me, please follow me on social media at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram, for the podcast handle. Ben, where can the listeners find you online?
At Ben Kaspick on X, Kaspick. And of course, the show Locked on Giants, it's LO_SF Giants on X. And then, of course, we're everywhere you get podcasts, and including YouTube.
Now, Ben, we just witnessed D-backs versus Giants. Very close series between our two teams. Entering this season, I think you probably felt this way. I know I definitely felt this way. I felt like it was Dodgers tier 1. D-backs kind of like maybe on their own little tier. At least I felt like they were the second best team. Padres maybe a third team. I still like the Giants coming to the year, but I definitely felt like they were the fourth team in the NL West. But so far, 40-plus games into the season, after witnessing D-backs versus Giants, do you feel like our two teams are like neck and neck right now? How are you feeling about your Giants so far this year before we really dive into the nitty-gritty of this series?
I think the series itself showed that they kind of are neck and neck. And in the standings, the Giants have a little bit of an edge. It's just a 2-game edge now, with the D-backs taking 2 out of 3 there. Giants' run differential is significantly better, but I think the Diamondbacks' ability to score runs is definitely going to play out ahead of the Giants when it comes to, Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte and Josh Naylor, and just the top of the lineup is just a beast to get through. But the pitching for the D-backs has just not been, like, last year was an issue. This year it's been an issue. Whereas the Giants pitching, you didn't really see it in this series except for the first game, even though the Giants lost despite pitching well. Overall in the season, the Giants have really pitched well, and they've been clutch at hitting. And so when it comes down to it, I think that their play on the field showed that these two teams are pretty gritty and evenly matched right now.
Yeah, and I do like how you prefaced the end of your sentence with the right now, because I would like to believe the D-backs do have another level in them. The issue is we haven't seen it. The bullpen has been a big problem for Arizona this year. Justin Martinez out, AJ Puck is out. Every reliever we have tried in the 9th inning just hasn't seemed to be able to shut the door. We desperately need one of those Giants relievers, because it feels like you guys have like 6 dudes with like a sub-2 ERA. So we would love to have one of them in our pen. And we saw in this finale, we saw the D-backs, they had a 4-run lead entering those last few innings. And then little by little, the Giants just kept creeping away at the lead, kept chipping away. Did you feel like at some point the Giants were going to come back and win this game? Because the momentum was definitely shifting the Giants' way by the end of it.
I did. And part of the reason I did is because that is how they've won a lot of games this year, is not quite an 8-2 deficit and coming back, but a lot of like 3-0, which we actually saw in the middle game. It was 3-0 in the first, and they came back and put up 10 runs and won the game. They have won a lot of games. I think the most of the majors when in terms of come from behind wins, and specifically a lot of 2+ run come from behind wins. So any deficit really, they've been able to come back, but on the whole, like they have a lot of guys who have struggled on offense. So it doesn't necessarily feel sustainable, but you saw it today. I mean, that they were one swing away from winning the game. They also have a ton of walk-off wins. And so yeah, I did feel like there was they're one swing away there in the ninth from a win. And
Yeah, I wonder what the stats are on the team that makes the comeback but can't finish the comeback. Like they're down the few runs, they retake the lead and then still blow it in the ninth. Because that's been kind of the D-backs this season. There was a game where we're down like 5-6 runs against the Cubs, had a 10-run inning, Ben, and then still went on to lose. We've seen games where Eugenio Suarez has 4 home runs in a game. We still go on to lose. Like, I wonder what the comeback numbers would say if we could actually close out one of these games. And it's frustrating to see. There's a lot of decision making that I don't agree with the D-backs. We need to wait on word of Ketel Marte because we have to know, was he pulled from the game for precautionary reasons coming back from the injured list? Was he feeling sore? Or was it just a decision by Torey Lovullo to take their star player out the game to get the rookie some at-bats? Even though Ketel Marte was in the middle of a 2-home run game, I need to know what the decision-making was there. But so far from the Giants side, how do you feel about your manager? Because from the D-backs perspective, we're all so frustrated with Torey Lovullo. I feel like when you do the blame chart for the D-back struggles this season, feels like Lovullo gets the biggest piece for how he's managed the bullpen, using the J Marts and the AJ Pucks too early in the season, the deployment of his lineups. Like, how do you feel about the way you see your Giants manager lead your ball club? Because there was a pretty fun moment late in the game where we saw both of our managers potentially get ejected. The D-backs manager Lovullo did. I thought the Giants manager might have at one point as well.
That was pretty funny to see a play where both managers are really angry at the end of it is pretty rare, and so I did enjoy that. But I don't think there's been a lot of criticism of Bob Melvin. If anything, it actually would have to do with probably today's starter, Jordan Hicks, who came into the game with an ERA up around 6 and had a rough one again today. And the criticism would be that they've got these two guys, one of whom you saw today in Hayden Birdsong, and Arizona lit him up a little bit. He gave up 2 homers. And but otherwise, besides today, that's kind of the story of Arizona. They hit. But besides today, Hayden Birdsong has been really good. He's always been a starter, and yet he's in the bullpen. And it's like Jordan Hicks used to be a reliever. And I think a lot of people want to see these young guys like Hayden Birdsong, and then you also have Kyle Harrison, former like top 15 prospect in baseball, suddenly back throwing like 97, whereas his velocity was down last year, like 92, 93, and he's throwing like 97. And people want to see these young guys in the starting rotation because even though the Giants' record is what it is, their starters outside of Logan Webb and Robbie Ray now have generally had some difficulties. And that's been like the main criticism. I think people aren't really unhappy because the team generally has done well. They've fallen on a little bit of a rough patch here. They lost 4 in a row. They got swept by the Twins and then lost the first game of this series, and then they won. So now they've lost 5 out of their last 6. And so people are going to be a little grumpy now. But before that, it was like just good vibes because the team was doing well pretty consistently all season long.
Yeah, and for the Giants, I do like their team much more on paper this season than last year. I was happy to see Jordan Hicks pitching in the game today because I don't know why when you go on ERA leaders, despite Erod making the same amount of starts and having the same innings pitch as every other starter in baseball, he's not like qualified on like Baseball Reference or MLB.com. I don't understand why he's not a qualified pitcher, despite having all the numbers I would say. But if he was qualified, he would have came into this game number 1 worst ERA in the National League with Jordan Hicks, I think like number 3 behind him. So we knew this game was going to be a slugfest in the finale. Thankfully, the D-backs were barely able to hang on and survive, courtesy of a couple of big home runs from Ketel Marte to start us off. But this was a super close game and a super close series. And I want to ask you more about your rotation and how you feel about your lineup, moving forward. We know you got some big guys under contract, and Matt Chapman, Willie Adames. I want to ask you about how you feel about their long-term projections with the Giants, considering they're on pretty big contracts. But we're going to save all that talk for segment number 2, Ben, because first we got to talk to our listeners about Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Back here on the Locked On Dbacks, Locked On Giants crossover. Ben, we've seen some interesting starters from your rotation as well this series. We saw the ageless wonder Justin Verlander in Game 1, Robbie Ray in Game 2. I first want to start with JV because I did see, I don't know the name of the podcast, but it's the Chris Rose and the Trevor Plouffe podcast. They were talking about JV, about how like at one point he could have been like the last 300 win pitcher. And when you go back and look at his career, like it definitely would have been possible. He got like hurt in 2019. Then you had the COVID shortened season in 2020. So he basically missed 2 seasons of his career. But if you give him like 14 wins a season, those 2 years, he would be like 8 wins short of 300 right now. But basically, I'm just saying all that to say, how much do you think Verlander has left in the tank? I thought he looked pretty solid in the Game 1 against the Dbacks, but he definitely gave up some extra base hits. There were definitely a couple moments where the Dbacks could have tacked on a couple more runs, but didn't come through, didn't have the timely hits. How do you feel about what you've seen about Verlander so far this year? And do you think he can hold up if the Giants make it to the postseason?
I've been impressed by the ability that he has to throw mid to upper 90s at age 42. He's the oldest player in baseball, and yet, a lot of guys who get even pushing 40, they have to change the way they pitch. They're starting to throw low 90s, and they've got to be more like finesse and command guys, but he's still a power arm at age 42. And so I don't want to doubt him. That was a weird game. He gave up 9 hits, but only 2 runs, and the 2 runs were 2 solo homers by Corbin Carroll. And so that was an odd start. And he, speaking of wins, multiple times, 3 times this year has been in line for the win. And the excellent Giants bullpen overall coming into today, at least, I think they had the best bullpen ERA of any team. And they've blown wins of his in the 8th and then 2 in the 9th, including a 3-run lead in the 9th. So all of their kind of bullpen meltdowns have happened in games where Verlander has been in line to get a win. And so that's kind of like a second tier storyline to some of these games for the Giants. It's like it's like I don't really care about pitcher wins, and Verlander spent most of his career elsewhere, and so I care more about the Giants winning versus Verlander getting a win. But the players want to get him a win, and they've blown several of his games. But all in all, I mean, I think we discussed this going into the year. He shouldn't be your number 2 starter. He should be like your number 5 starter. And I think it's kind of playing out that way, where Robbie Ray has definitely established himself ahead of him. It's kind of been a melee with the rest of the 3. Landon Roop Justin Verlander and Jordan Hicks, who we saw today. So I think you may see some changes, but all in all, I mean, just impressed with Verlander's ability to still essentially throw hard and be a power arm at this advanced age. And if he wants to keep pitching, I think he could, but I don't know. Back end starter to me, even with mid 90s stuff.
Yeah, and I think it helps that Verlander is not like one of these pitchers of like today's generation. Like, as good as Hunter Green is, he's probably not going to have like a super long career because he tries to throw 100 miles per hour every pitch he has. Verlander was always a guy that could hit 97, 98, but he always saved it for like the fifth, sixth as he got later into the game. So I think
he still does that.
He still does that. So I think the fact that he was always a guy that saved himself for the biggest moments in the game and didn't just try to blow out his arm those first few innings, I think it's a huge reason why his career has been able to, thrive as long as it's had. So Verlander's the guy. If you ask me growing up who I think the best pitcher of the generation is, it's Verlander, it's Scherzer, and then I guess you could go Kershaw. But the postseason, we know about the postseason struggle.
Oof, ugly.
But you also have another former D-back in the rotation in Robbie Ray. Of course, he's such like a weird player because with the D-backs, he was like an all-star. Then he was a 3 true outcome player where we were just frustrated. Then he left, won a Cy Young. Then he had Tommy John. Like, such a weird career for Robbie Ray. You didn't get to see him a ton last year with the Giants as he was coming off injury, but what has been your early impression with him so far? Because I don't know if you remember, but in the roundtable, I think Robbie Ray having a comeback season was kind of my call for the Giants, finishing top 10 in Cy Young voting. I think I was in on the Robbie Ray comeback train early. So what has your early return been on Robbie Ray?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember you calling him a big X factor for the Giants, and look at their record and look at the fact, I don't know if you know this, Millard, but the Giants have not lost a single game that was started by Robbie Ray all season.
Yeah, I think that's like, I saw someone tweet it. They're like 0-9 when Verlander starts, but 9-0 when Robbie Ray starts, which is just absolutely insane.
If that Verlander stat is true, I didn't know it, but they are in fact for sure 9-0. I can say that with confidence.
I'll Google it.
Okay, in games started by Robbie Ray, and some of that is just luck. Of course, he hasn't had great starts every time, and sometimes he's given up some runs, and they've kind of come back, and the offense has bailed him out. But all in all, you look up, and he's pitched 50 in the third innings, and he's got a 3.04 ERA, and so there's not much more you could ask for out of a guy who, like you said, I mean, his career has been up and down and left and right and backwards and frontwards. Like, it really has been all over the place, which is kind of poetic because his pitching can be all over the place as well. Like, his command can escape him at times, but lately we've seen his walk rate kind of plummet, and well, I guess it's still decent but not great lately. But I think you saw in the second game of the series when he gave up those 3 runs. He did give up 3 walks in the outing, but he gave up 3 runs in the first and then nothing the rest of the way and struck out 9. And so he was a big reason why they won that game, despite giving up 3 in the first. And so he's been good. Like, 3.04 ERA, you'll take that when you've also got Logan Webb on your team and you know what you're going to get out of him. And the fact that these other pitchers, Jordan Hicks, Verlander, and Landon Roop, like, have been inconsistent, and that's kind of a generous word. Robbie Ray has been a really nice kind of stabilizing force, and it's like win day when he pitches. And I also made this point on my podcast from earlier today that the way they got him, they traded Mitch Haniger, also former D-back, of course, and Anthony DeSclafani to the Mariners, and the Mariners released Haniger before this season, and they're still paying him this year. So the Giants got away from a couple bad contracts and ended up with a guy who right now has a 3.04 ERA for them. So pretty savvy trade.
The Mariners make terrible moves. I mean, they salary dumped us, Paul Sewald, who has not as good now, but helped us get to the World Series. Salary dumped us, Eugenio Suarez. Like the Mariners, if you want a good player, just go talk to the Mariners because if that guy's making more than $10 million, I'll probably trade them to you.
And you got Ketel Marte from the Mariners.
Yeah, can't forget that. Yeah,
that he's turned into one of the best players in baseball. So
that one was really helpful. We love that one.
Yeah, no, that involved Haniger as well.
Yeah, a double Haniger trade.
So yeah, both of our teams have benefited from trading Mitch Haniger to the Mariners.
Yeah, I want to ask you about a couple of your position players, but I think I will save it for segment number 3 because segment number 2 is already running kind of long. So I want to ask you about Jung-Ho Lee, and if you're worried about the long-term contracts of Matt Chapman and Willy Adames, we'll discuss that in segment number 3.
And also, I want to talk to you guys about Just Ingredients because when it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. Just Ingredients offers an NSF-certified line of protein powder, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by major athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has also partnered with 2-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF certified sports line to fuel his training and recovery. I love that Just Ingredients prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without the artificial junk. Just visit justingredients.us/Bryce Harper and use code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off your first order. And for more wellness tips, follow @just.ingredients on Instagram.
Back here on the Locked on Dbacks, Locked on Giants crossover, we've discussed how good the pitching has been for the Giants so far this year, or at least, some of the starters and, of course, the bullpen. But how do you feel about the offense? Because that always feels like it's been like the thing that has held back the Giants the last few years. I always feel like it's just a bunch of dudes in the lineup, like guys that could help out a lineup, but not dudes who you want to be like your number 3, number 4 hitter. And so far this year, I like the ceiling a lot more from the lineup. Guys like Jung-Ho Lee stepping up in a big way, added Willy Adames in the offseason. How are you feeling about the offense so far to start 2025?
Well, it's complicated, let's put it that way, because they've scored a decent number of runs, but a lot of that has been that they've hit well in high leverage situations. But on the whole, if you look at the numbers for certain guys like Lamont Wade Jr.'s numbers are just horrific. He's been one of the worst position players in baseball if you look at something like Fangraphs WAR. And it takes, you don't have to be a stat nerd to just look at his batting average on base and slugging and be like, wow, he's really struggled. And also Patrick Bailey, as good as he is with the glove, he's been horrific offensively. And Willy Adames has really generally struggled, but is coming around more as of late. But it was a rough first month or so for Willy Adames, very rough. And however, I think that you're right that for such a long time that the whole lineup was just a bunch of dudes who were kind of, you couldn't really get excited about, and yet they were okay enough to not be, you're not the Colorado Rockies and bringing up the back end of the division and 35 games under 500 or something. But now they do have several guys who are in the lineup every day. This has been a much more stable lineup, less platooning, with Jung-Ho Lee, Matt Chapman, Mike Yastrzemski having a really nice season. Yeah. Elliot Ramos has established himself as a good, young, everyday player, which is a big deal for this team. It's been forever since they've developed a good young outfielder specifically. Literally, it's been decades since they've developed a good. It was
the last one.
Chili Davis in 87. We're talking the last all-star homegrown outfielder for the Giants.
I only know that name as a hitting coach for the Boston Red Sox.
Right. I think it was Chili Davis in the 87 or something before I was born. And anyway, like Adames and Chapman and Lee and Ramos and Yaz are in there just pretty much every day, and Wilmer Flores. And when Tyler Fitzgerald is healthy, he's in there too, and he's another young player establishing himself. So it feels a lot better than it's felt in some previous seasons, but Adames's rough start is a little bit concerning because he also struggled on defense. So it was like he wasn't hitting, he wasn't fielding, he was kind of making outs on the bases. But Jung-Hoo Lee has been, you saw it. I mean, people thought, oh, the only issue is this guy's not going to hit for power. Well, if you watch this series, I mean, he hit like a no doubt homer where Ketel Marte hit his homer almost. And that's a land where not a lot of people hit home runs up there. And so he's gone into Yankee Stadium and hit a couple home runs. He hit a big homer at Wrigley. And now he's hit a couple home runs in the last 2 days in the series. And so his power, it's just been, he's been one of the breakout good stories of baseball this year. And they do have a much more stable lineup. And you see a lot of jerseys of Lee and Chapman and probably Adames too. So it's been better, but I do have concerns about certain players. And then you mentioned long term. That's a whole other story. Like, because Chapman, it's a 6-year deal and he's already, I think, 32. And so you do definitely worry about the back half of that. Adames is only 29. And so, you know, it's a 7-year deal, but he's still only 29. So you got several years before you start worrying about aging there. But of course, he will age eventually.
Yeah, and his deal, just looking at it, backloaded. So it's only 13 this year and 13 next year. But then when he's 31 years old, the salary actually goes up to like 31 million a year as well. So I was just wondering, it's like the first year, both of those contracts, you know, Willie's doing better recently. Chapman's always solid. But do you feel like they're living up to the money that they're getting paid right now?
I think that Chapman for sure is, like, because a big part of his game is defense, and he's just continued to be pretty sensational defensively, and offensively the batting average isn't really there right now. It's 219, but the on base is 349, and he's hit for some power. And I think he's a guy who he just grinds. I think he's played like 50 something consecutive games. He's just out there every day. And he's fast. He's kind of underratedly impact on the bases. And yeah, he's just a grinder and definitely living up to it. Adames were kind of more like learning here in San Francisco and definitely saw a big slump to start the year, but it's coming around and the swings have been better. And Jung-Hoo Lee is signed through, he has an opt-out after 2027, but that feels like a good contract. And then Logan Webb is locked up for several more years as well. So you don't really, I feel like if you add one more contract that starts to go a little wonky, then maybe you have a problem. But as of right now, their kind of future obligations don't look like they're going to sink them and put them in a really bad spot, like it looks like with the Padres, with the likes of all these older players like signed
Bogey.
Bogarts with like 9 years left on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, so.
But then they always find like some young guy like Stephen Kolek all of a sudden is turning into something. Michael King was a great guy to get in the Juan Soto deal. So
he's a free agent after the year, though.
Oh, that's a good point. They are going to have to spend some money.
And so is Cease.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, their whole rotation could be blown up by the.
Darvish is like 50.
Yeah, they still got Musgrove, but isn't he under Tommy John?
Tommy John, yeah. So, but we all thought the Padres might fall apart, and it's been the opposite. Yeah, we'll see if that holds up. But yeah, them doing well is kind of a thorn in our sides here as National League West hosts, I would say. Because
Go ahead.
I
mean, you have like Tatis and Machado finally living up to the billing. I mean, Machado had a down season last year. Tatis hasn't looked the same since PEDs, but both of them this year. And then the real big story is healthy. Both of those guys might not even be the best Padres like position player, because healthy, it's been like Jackson Merrill in 2025. Like if he's the best Padres player and then Tatis and Machado's like 2 and 3, like, yeah, that lineup can compete with anyone if that's going to be the top of it. But from what you've seen, let's move it to the NOS as we wrap up the pod here. Just quick thoughts. From what you've seen so far, do you still feel like we still probably feel like the Dodgers are tier 1, but Do you feel as strong as you did preseason? Because coming into the year, we were like, are the Dodgers going to break the all-time win-loss record? Are they going to win 120 games? And now going through 40-plus games, it's like, they haven't had the division lead the whole season. We've seen injuries to that rotation. It feels like they're a little bit more vulnerable. Like, how do you compare the Dodgers versus the rest of the NL West now? Like, do you raise the ceiling of the Giants? Do you raise the ceiling of the Padres? Or you're like, okay, Dodgers, I'm not as scared of them now if I face them in a postseason series?
Oh, I'd be scared because I think they'll coast probably to a playoff spot at the very least, and they'll save their arms and they'll be careful, and then they'll have people ready for October. But I was one of the people who said take the under on the over-under. I remember kind of not arguing, but with Jeff Snyder from Locked On Dodgers about the projections of 103.5, and I was like, no, take the under on that. And I still would say that, but I do think realistically they will win the division. I think they're the best team, and they've had their struggles, and yet they're still in first place. And it's more like we kind of thought the Dbacks were the second best team, and so far, not just record wise, but run differential wise, they have the second most runs scored in the division, but they've given up almost as many runs as the Rockies. Not almost, like 40 fewer. That's not almost, but
okay, yeah.
But it's not, you're not close to the Padres or the Giants or the Dodgers. You've given up 50 plus more runs. So that's going to be the question, is can the D-backs pitch enough to support their really good offense, and can the Giants just sustain this like magic that they've had? And can the Padres we've classified as kind of a weak team when it comes to depth. And so if certain guys go down, are they able to keep up this torrid pace all season long if an injury or two strikes? And so as it stands now, I think the D-backs are probably the biggest disappointment and the Giants probably the biggest surprise in the division. But there's like 75% of the season left. So it remains to be seen how it all plays out. And it's baseball. And like we saw in this series, it can be a game of inches and a game of one run, and that can make all the difference. And I'm excited to see it the rest of the way. D-backs are definitely good, though. Tough team to play. Corbin Carroll, my gosh. And Ketel Marte, my gosh. Those guys are so good.
Yeah, the biggest thing is don't sit your best players. Can we stop sitting the Martes and the Perdomos and the Carrolls when they're hot? The Lourdes, when he hits a grand slam, don't sit him the next day, Tori. It makes no sense. We'll see if the D-backs can hang on and get a postseason spot. NL West, potentially. Are they going to send 4 teams to the division or to the playoffs? Dodgers with the division title, and then D-backs, Giants, Padres, all as wildcard teams. We'll see. NL East is tough. NL Central, I like the Cubs. The Reds, they're pretty frisky, but we'll see if they're ready for postseason baseball. That's it for this crossover edition. Locked On Diamondbacks, Locked On Giants. Please follow me on social media at CareerThomas24 on Twitter, at Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram. Ben, where can the listeners find you?
On Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick, and Locked On Giants is available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there on video in the flesh.
Yes, podcasts. We stream on all platforms, including YouTube. So hit subscribe. Locked On Diamondbacks, Locked On Giants on YouTube. Another series, another crossover. Until next time, Ben Kaspick.